Glover Teixeira versus Jamal Hill. This is really something, you know. It was supposed to be Yuri Prohashka, and Yuri screamed so hard his shoulder fell off or something.
No.
He punched a tree, and
The tree punched back.
yeah, the tree put him in an armbar and took his shoulder out or something. But anyways, no, I mean, for real though, like heard it in training, and then the story coming from Dana White, in case you're not well versed in the lore behind this. Yuri Prohashka was training, popped out his shoulder. Somebody in his gym popped it back in.
Allegedly, the worst shoulder injury the UFC has ever seen.
Well, I think, I think it probably got worse after it got popped back in because, listen, you know, if you are good at anything, right? I have a physical blue collar job. If I get fucking hurt at work, I'm not going to have somebody pop my shit back in because they could mess me up more, and now I'm out of work for an undisclosed amount of time. And I'm a little bit shocked, surprised that Yuri Prohashka did not have the same mentality. It seems like a little bit common sense. Now, could that be Dana White just fabricating something? You know, it could have been the doctors at the PI. Who knows that like did this to him? I could see that as well, but I think it's more likely. You know, Yuri was training in the woods somewhere. Some shaman tried to spit dust on his shoulder and pop it back in, and that's why he's out for so long now. It's going to be at least a year, right?
Yeah, got into a fight with a wolf.
Yeah. So, he probably went to a witch doctor to heal his shoulder, and that's why it fucked up. I could see him doing that. But either way, I'm rolling with
He probably just tried to heal it by, fighting with it and assumed that the mixed martial arts gods would take care of him.
Yeah, probably. He does believe in, the way of the samurai and everything.
Yeah.
For life. That probably says, stick a sword in it, and it'll feel better. If you have no arm, how could your arm hurt? But anyways, I'm rolling with Glover here. Glover at plus 105 to get the win in Brazil. It's probably a huge moment for him. To fight for the belt in Brazil at 43 years old. I still believe in Glover though. I think that fight against Yuri the last time around, while both these guys were winded. He made a lot of mistakes. Like when he had Yuri up against the fence, knocked basically, out on his feet, and he tried to pull guard to a guillotine, against Yuri. I don't think that you see him make a lot of those same mistakes again. I don't think you see him leave his chin out there. While he is 43 years old, he still improves a lot with a lot of his fights. Jamal Hill is young. He doesn't really have a crazy amount of UFC experience. He does have some great knockouts, but I don't think he has it in him yet. I think that Jamal Hill is a guy that you'll see in the future. I think that this is an opportunistic thing from the UFC, where they looked at Jamal Hill and said, all right, he's available. Let's throw him in, because who else would it have been really? He was signed to fight Anthony Smith. Which I think he would have won easily. But Glover Teixeira, I think, is a whole other challenge. And Glover brings a lot more to the table. I think you have a wise old Glover that's still very talented. So, I'm going to roll with Glover. I think that this is really with Yuri Prohashka being out, I think this is really Glover's belt to win, and I think that may the stars have aligned for, with the Magomed Ankalaev fight and, Jan Blachowicz, that ending in a draw so Glover can reclaim his belt. That may be the case. Maybe this is just the universe saying this is Glover's belt. Maybe I sound corny for saying that, but at plus 105, that's good underdog money. I'll roll with Glover any day. I'm willing to take him.
61% of Tapology is also rolling with you. Here is my thing about this fight. So let's talk about what each guy is good at. Glover is good at getting hit and not going down and being able to recover and then forcing that knockdown or whatever happened into a scramble, which ultimately ends up with him on the ground and implementing his game plan of elbows, punches, submission attempts, active ground game from the top, pressure. That's what Glover wants to do. And he did it well against Yuri Prohashka. He did it well against Jan Blachowicz. Keep in mind, he submitted Jan Blachowicz inside of like the first or the second round. Yuri Prochazka, he was about to win that fight until he tapped with like 15 seconds left in the fifth round. Thiago Santos, he submitted. Anthony Smith, he knocked out straight. And I think that was the fight where Anthony Smith was handing his teeth to the referee. And a split decision over Nikita Krylov. Like you said, he has been getting better over this stretch. And then I look at Jamal Hill's last 5 fights. You know, he's got the win over Thiago Santos in the fourth round. For a guy, all right, let me just continue with this. In like the fourth round, after you know a back and forth war there, he was winning a lot of it, and he was getting very confident. Thiago Santos isn't the Thiago Santos that we remember fighting a very close match with John Jones. A lot of John Jones references today. Johnny Walker, he got the knockout of. I'm not sure how much that's saying. We've seen chin issues with Johnny Walker over and over and over again.
That shit was also ridiculous.
That was a fight. He's got the right hook win over Jimmy Crute. Lost to Paul Craig, another grappler, which I think is not in. I mean, listen, at that fight, yeah, he snapped his bicep. But at the end of the day, he did get pulled into a guard and was on the ground. So, you know, I think that's not insignificant either. And then you have, you know, obviously the win against a very old OSP. What Jamahal Hill wants to do is he wants to go in there. He wants to throw haymakers and he wants to get you out quickly. His style is not very technical. It's unorthodox and it's looping punches. It's some straight punches, but it's punches with power. And that's ultimately what Jamahal Hill wants to do. Against a guy like Glover Teixeira, I think it's the exact wrong stylistic matchup for him, or I guess it's a bad stylistic matchup for Jamahal Hill. Glover Teixeira, up until this point, we've seen him take a lot of damage from a lot of really heavy hitters, especially in the first and second round. Jamahal Hill wasn't able to get Thiago Santos out of there until the fourth round, and that was a bit of stamina that kind of creeped in, some lack of gas tank from Thiago Santos, obviously aging a little bit, being in wars. And Thiago Santos wasn't totally out, but hey, listen, fair to Jamahal Hill. I'm not putting an asterisk on that win at all. All I'm saying is the power level in order to that takes him 3+ rounds to get out of Thiago Santos, to get him out of there. The ability for Glover Teixeira to be able to take a shot, I'm just concerned. And I think with Jamahal Hill, we haven't seen a ton of grappling, but we saw Paul Craig get him to the ground and ultimately have his way on the ground with him. He snapped his bicep. I'm not sure if that counts as an injury or if that's more or less like a submission by Paul Craig, because he was wrenching on that arm, right? And Jamahal Hill maybe didn't have the wherewithal to take his arm out of there because of the pressure that could go on there. So maybe that's speaking to a bit his ground game. Ultimately, if Glover Teixeira is able to stand and bang in there with the likes of Yuri Prochazka, I'm not as concerned with him against the number 7 ranked Jamahal Hill. Now, he is 43 years old, but he got to remember, he's training with Poatan Pajeda, probably one of the scariest punchers inside of the UFC, and they're making each other better. So at this point, I feel confident in a 43-year-old. You know, it's only a 3-inch reach advantage. He's been against, you know, heavy punchers in the past, probably far more technical and experienced than Jamahal Hill. So at this point, I think what's going to happen is Jamahal Hill's going to try and rush in there. Maybe you know, he'll be reserved, and maybe he'll try and be more technical. But with what I've seen from Jamahal Hill, especially on Twitter, where he's getting into Twitter wars, multiple Twitter wars a day with people who don't matter, to the point where he actually basically going to be like, all right, I'm going to stop responding to people because this isn't good for my mentals, or whatever he said. I'm not liking the dedication there. I think he maybe is a little bit overconfident going against a 43-year-old guy. Maybe that's just confidence in his game plan, and maybe that's going to be good for him.
People fuck up against Glover, too.
And people fuck up against Glover. They end up, no matter what, getting into, what's up, Man of War? How you guys doing? You know, they end up fighting Glover Teixeira's fight, just like I was saying earlier in the show here, that they end up fighting Sean Strickland's fight. So I think somehow Jamahal Hill, they're going to have a back and forth. Somehow it's going to end up maybe in the middle of the round on the ground, and we're going to see Glover just kind of take control there. And I ultimately think Glover's going to get this one by finish, probably in the third round. I'll give Jamahal Hill benefit of the doubt that he's able to get out of that and be able to survive in the first round, probably land some good punch. He's going to land really good shots every round, and I think Glover's just going to be able to survive, get knocked down, grab an arm, grab a leg, grab the waist, grab the back, grab something, get it to the ground, and ultimately impose his will. I don't think Jamahal Hill's got the ground game to be able to contend with a guy like Glover Teixeira. And you got to remember, a lot of people don't know this, but before he was in the UFC, when he couldn't get a visa to come over to the USA, Glover Teixeira was the Brazilian boogeyman. And everyone knew UFC is where like 99% of the best fighters are. But there's this guy, Glover, out in Brazil that is mauling people. So he's always kind of been the boogeyman. And at 43 years old, it's kind of only adding to his mystique, trading with an amazing striker like Alex Pereira. And Glover's just such a nice guy. He's always smiling. It's hard to root against him. I'm all for Glover here. I don't not like Jamahal. I think Jamahal Hill's fun, but there's levels to this game.
Yeah, that is a big part of it too. Is the Alex Pereira striking partner. That's big. All right. Well, listen, we're coming up on an hour and a half, so I think we should roll into our pick rundown and call this episode, for the day.